Hi and welcome to another session about the compositing nodes for Cycles Render. Today I'm going to show you how the time input works. But before I start, you could look at this little animation. It only takes about 30 seconds. Okay, hope you liked it, and what I'm going to do now is take this very large node tree and explain it step by step. To make this film or animation work, I needed a couple of render layers, so for each frame I did like 240 of them, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 I believe renders, and I believe I can do it a little bit more clever than this, but that is how it turned out, so I will explain it from this angle. Okay, we will take it step by step, as I said, so we can start from the beginning. And what I will do first is that I will show a mirror with the pawn or a mirror with the king. And to decide if I will use the pawn or if I will use the king, I use a time input. And I call this time input mirror object, so I know that it's about the mirror. And in this you could see that I have a curve that's going up and down and so on. And what it tells the compositor is that I will start at the first frame and I will end at the last frame. And the input, the x, is from 0 to 1, and this is also from 0 to 1 in the y-axis. So you need some type of mathematics where you have to calculate, so 240, half of that is like 120, so 120 is 0.5 because that's the half of this one. So it always have to calculate a little bit here, but if you just know that it's from 0 to 1 here and then you have the frames here, then it's just to divide everything or try whatever you would like to. But I start from the beginning at the lowest point here, which means that everything is 0, and that I send to the factor here, and when everything is 0 it uses the upper part here, which means that only the pawn is visible, and in the end you could see that it's 1 since it's maximum, and 1 of course then means that the factor is saying that we only should use the render layer at the bottom, which means the mirror with the king. So this curve goes through the animation and shows either the king or the pawn or something in between. Since this was like a dream, you could say, then we had a lot of these in-betweens here before it finally became the pawn finally became a king. So in the end it's the king, in the beginning the pawn. So that is that, and we just send either a king or pawn in here and mix it with mirror only no light. And what is that? Mirror only no light, that is just the mirror I put as a copy above the mirror we had from the beginning to cover the light that I had on the frame. If you're not done the previous session where I build the king and a pawn, I suggest that you do that, because then you have all the images and so on, and you could follow, you could build this by yourself if you want to. Either way, I had two mirrors, one with the light on the side and one without. So this is without the light. What I do now is that I put this above that mirror that has the light, and how much I do is something like a feather, so I tell them that this should be exact on the edge or perhaps a little bit over the edge. So I steer that or control that in using this factor, and I have the mirror here. And then I send the result here. So that means that I have either the pawn or the king and the frame of the mirror in this. And here you see it says light or dark, and still I work from the first frame to the last frame, from frame 1 to 240. And here I set how much of the frame without the mirror should block the frame with the mirror. So from the beginning I hardly block anything at all, then it gets dark, then it gets light, then it gets dark, light, and so on, and in the end everything is light and very, very maximum 1 as a value. So this input time here is then controlling the frame that is on top of the mirror. Okay, so that is what that frame is doing. Then we come to this part here, and we see we have king and the king, and we have the pawn and the pawn. So you can see I send over the image that could be a mirror with a king or a mirror with a pawn that maybe has some light around it or not, depending on the input time here. And that we will mix with the floor. So we put in now a king with the floor, and what I've done here is not the best solution, but it's a solution anyway. I will put the mirror and the king on the same frame, but since I've done it without masking, I could mask, and that would be better, but I did this without masking in the picture. I need to put another king in front, because what will happen now is if I put the mirror here, the mirror will be exactly as it should be here, but it will be in front of the king, so you will only see a part of the king, and the other thing will be the mirror above it, and that is not correct. The king should be first and then the mirror behind. So what I need to do is that I have to put the king in front of the mirror. So I take this as a floor, I put in the mirror, and in the last step I put the king in front of the mirror, and then everything is working. So I work with 3 render layers here. It's a little bit too much, especially when I'm doing a render. A better way would be to make the mirror with a mask of the king instead. So I should use the mask layer here and put in the king and the pawn on these 2 frames and use that instead. But since I didn't do that, I needed to put a king in front or a pawn in front of the floor. So okay, so 3 render layers in place here. 1 comes from here, the mirror. 1 comes from here, which is the floor, and then I put together the king here. So this line here will be the king line, so to say, the floor with the king. This do exactly the same thing here, but for the pawn. So here you have the floor with the pawn coming from here. So now you can understand what this input does. It says real object here. Yes, it's the object that is on the chessboard. So what it does is it decides what should stand on the chessboard. since I put in either the king here or the pawn here. So I start with the pawn on the chessboard, and then it's nearly a king, then it's going up and being pawn again, and king and pawn, and suddenly it decides for, wow, the transfer is completed, now it's a king, and it will be a king almost a third of the animation. But since it's only 30 seconds, it goes rather quickly, and I think that is what I needed to have, since the camera should zoom in and so on. So I used about that amount of time to just show the king on the floor. So then I mix everything together, so depending on the input line or input time, either king or pawn. Okay? And then we finished. The next step here, everything you can see from this part here, is about the effect. We have one more input, or we have two more input lines here, I can see, or time input. The first one, it's just general light or darkness. I have a color balance here, and I have put that, as you can see, rather low. And if I don't use any factor at all, it will not have anything with this to do. But if I have a factor of 1, it will use all these values completely. So the time input here controls if we should use the color balance or not. So I just put that in, and I run it through here, and if it's maximum value, then we use that, and if not, then we're not using it. So that is how I control that one. And then I also use sunbeam, and the sunbeam I take from the mix here. I think I can do like this, Shift A, output, and viewer, put it here, and put it like this. Okay, so now we can see the image behind us. This is before the sunbeam, this is after sunbeam, but I build the sunbeam from this image here, from that viewer you can see here. So that means that we get sun rays from every light part of this image. But to play a little with this, I was creating like a dream world. You can see here it's it's nothing that is solid, it's gliding back and through, and that is the sunlight that does this, or sunbeam. So to control it and make it less or make it more, depending if we are middle of a dream or if the dream came true, I would then have in the middle of the dream long sun rays, and in the end shorter sun rays, or sunbeams. So I then control those ray length here, as you can see. Not so much in length, then a little bit longer, shorter, and really long in the end until finish line, and then the sunbeams go down almost completely. So that is the final time input that I uses, and I put that in, so I combine that image here with the sunbeam here in this mixer using the time input here. And then it's just some lens distortion and so on to make it a little bit more dreamy, so to say, and a final color balance, and out to the final render. So that is the complete node. So not that complicated if I take it just step by step, and that is how you build a node always. It could most of the time look very much in the end, but if you just take it step by step, it's normally rather easy to make it. And as you can see, we have used time input for several things. We have used it to control what render layer should be shown as a mirror. We have controlled the render layer for putting the frame on the mirror if it should be much light or less light from the mirror frame. We have controlled what is standing on the floor using the real object time input here. And we have controlled the complete environment light using the light and dark. And we have also controlled the sunbeam in my animation using the ray length time input that I put in here. And the name here is just something that I've written, so you can write whatever you want. It's the normal time input that you find using Shift A, input and time. So this is the standard layer for that one, or standard default value, how it looks. So that one I've used for all these. Okay? And then it's just to press the animation button, and it will go on and on for a couple of hours or a couple of days depending on hardware and so on. What I've done more is, if I go to render here, you can see that my setting is violet here, or purple, and that is because I put in a name here. So I put tag frame. And what that does is that it takes the frame number as a seed. And why should I do that? Well, because if I use the same seed and I have like a noise or something on my my animation, for every frame the noise will be on exact same spot if I use the same seed, which make it very disturbing and unnatural. If I, on the other hand, change the frame here, that will mean that the noise will move around when I'm doing the animation, and it will be a more natural look, and it will be more like a real movie, a real animation. So if you can use this, then just put in, like I did, the name, frame and the tag sign before that. I didn't use that much of a render here, just 15, and I used the noise. When you're using frames here, for every render frame you build, you have to decide if you would like to use denoising or not. So you can control every render frame that you do if it should have denoising or not. I use denoising on everything. I put my render frame rather low, and I also took down the modifiers. You cannot see it here, but I can change. So I select something like my king here to have less subdivision, since it's not a still, it's an animation. It's no use to have a really high value here, so I put them down. I think I had 3 on my still image, but here I can use 1 and that will be okay. So then I just put it together, and I went here, pressed animation and selected what format I would like to have on that, and everything was final. So that is a little bit how you work with the time input here. As you can see, you can have it in many different ways, and it's only your fantasy that stops you from using it. And the only thing you have to remember really is that you use the start frame and the end frame, and you have from 0 to 1 here when you do the calculation when things should happen in your animation. Okay, so that was about the time input, and I hope you learned something this time as well. And if you would like to know when I make my next session, just press subscribe, and have a happy day, and goodbye.